was never really a fan of this pie as a kid until I had it around 10 years ago, and when I realized that it was filled with a gooey, buttery, nutty filling, I was hooked. And now I've made it keto and there's only 2 grams of carbs per slice. You are going to be shocked at how much this looks and tastes just like the classic. We use ingredients that are similar to those in a pecan pie, including a substitute for corn syrup. But this incredible buttery, gooey pie starts with a flaky pie crust. So let's get to baking so I can show you how to turn this holiday classic keto. If you've made keto pie crust before, you know that the majority of them are just ones that you press in. They're not flaky at all, but I have a recipe that makes keto pie crust that you can roll it out so you can make a lattice, you can make shapes, plus it's super flaky. Start by adding 1 cup of almond flour to a food processor, then add 3 tablespoons of coconut flour, 1 tablespoon of xanthan gum, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Give that a pulse to combine. Next, add 1/2 cup of unsalted cubed butter, and you want to make sure that your butter is as cold as possible. So what I'll do, I'll cube this up and I'll put it inside the freezer while I gather up the rest of my ingredients for the pie crust. So in about 10 to 15 minutes, this butter would be cold, and this is the key to making flaky pie crust, is to make sure your butter is always cold before it bakes. We pulse this with 1 ounce of softened cream cheese just until coarse crumbles form. Then add in 1 egg, 1.5 teaspoons of rice vinegar or apple cider vinegar, and then pulse just until a dough ball forms. You don't want to over manipulate this dough because then it just increases the chance that that butter is going to melt. And we want chunks of butter in this pie dough because we want it flaky. And if you don't have a food processor, you can try and mix this up in a blender or just use one of these, a pastry blender, or just 2 forks. At this step, if you didn't really want to go on, you just wanted to stop at the crust because you don't really have time to make a full pie in one day, you can stop here. Just wrap it in plastic wrap or put it in a freezer safe bag, and you can refrigerate it or freeze it. But if you are continuing on, you just want to place it between 2 sheets of parchment paper. Now, to keep your parchment paper from slipping, lay down a wet paper towel first and then sandwich your dough in between the parchment paper. Then using a rolling pin, roll it out until the dough is around 1/8 to 1/4 inch thick and your pie circle is just slightly larger than your pie plate. And if you look at this crust, you can see these chunks of butter, and this is what you want. This is what's going to give you that flaky pie crust. And if at any point during this your butter starts to look like it's getting soft or melted, or your dough starts to stick to the parchment paper, just stick it back in the refrigerator for 10 to 15 minutes so it'll re-solidify that butter, and then it's easy to peel off the parchment paper and your butter stays solid. After you flip your dough onto your pie plate, you can fold the edges however you like, and if it tears, just grab some dough from the side and repair it. Nobody's gonna know. Then we're gonna put this pie crust into the refrigerator while we move on to make our pecan pie filling. But before we do that, let's take time to thank our sponsor of today's video, which is Element Electrolytes. Element contains a science-backed electrolyte mix of 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium. There's also no sugar or coloring. It's a delicious way to hydrate, and I like to sip on them while I'm busy running around trying to get ready for the holidays. Right now, Element is offering my viewers a free sample pack with any order. That's 8 single-serving packets free with any Element order. It's a great way to try all 8 flavors or just to share with your friends and family that gather around the holidays. Get yours at drinkelement.com/KetoFocus, and this deal is only available through my link down below, so you have to go to drinkelement.com/KetoFocus. To make our keto pecan filling, pour in 1/2 cup of heavy whipping cream, 1/2 cup of allulose syrup, and 1/3 cup of packed brown sugar-free sweetener into a saucepan. The allulose syrup is 0 carbs and it's going to act as our corn syrup in this recipe. Let that cook over medium heat for a few minutes until the sweetener dissolves, and then turn off the heat and stir in 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Once that's melted, you want to stir in 6 egg yolks, but make sure your mixture isn't too hot because we don't want these eggs to curdle. So just kind of check it and see if there's no problem when waiting like a couple of minutes for the mixture to cool, just to be on the safe side so we're not gonna scramble some eggs in here. Then we'll whisk in the yolks. And if you're wondering what to do with all those leftover egg whites, well then you can make a favorite holiday cookie, which is keto meringues. These are 0 carbs and they're delicious. Next, bring back your pie crust and sprinkle around 1/2 cup of chopped pecans to the bottom, and then pour in your filling mixture into the crust. Then we'll bake this at 325 degrees for around 35-45 minutes. Kind of just depends on your oven, but you want to cook it until it rises and it's set on top. It'll be a little jiggly, that's okay because it's going to firm up in the refrigerator, but don't overbake it. I kind of did here just because the crust is a little dark, but I got a little distracted because I kind of have a sick pup to take care of. After you bake it, we're gonna refrigerate it for 1 hour, and this pie will make you wanna do a happy dance. It's incredible with whipped cream or keto ice cream on top, and if you wanna see how to make the best keto ice cream, well then just click right here.